Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's go. Kevin here, top 1 financial advisor and best-selling author. We are here to talk about the stock market. Today I want to talk to my new investors and give you a tip that I think is really going to change your investing journey and make you a much better investor, while also avoiding or at least pushing back some huge mistakes that new investors run into, myself included. Now I want to do this because 5 to 7 times a day, whether it's via comment on YouTube or public or Instagram or email or Twitter, I get questions all the time about how can I start investing? What is the best stock for me to buy? Can you mentor me? I get these questions all the time. I try to answer as many as I can, but there are more than 400,000 of y'all depending on what platform you're on. Okay, and if I add them up all together, we're pushing somewhere in that 500,000 subscriber or follower count. It is hard to keep up with all the stuff, okay? And last I checked, I was just one person here, okay? Y'all see my daughter in the beginning of the videos. She don't have much experience, at least not yet, not when it comes to investing. So here's what I need you to know as a new investor and what I think can absolutely help you, especially in the long run, but I think it can help you focus and concentrate right now. You need to focus on one thing. One thing at a time, become proficient at that thing, and then start to branch out. Now you may be thinking, well, what one thing? There are thousands of things out there. What should I focus on first? Now, the first thing you need to know about what to focus on is this. It depends on what you want to do. I'll tell you what I did, and I'll give you some options to kind of choose from. What I did when I started my investing journey back in 2010, I focused on index funds. That was the first thing that I had heard about. I took an internship and learned a little bit about it. Didn't know what they were saying because they're using complex terms and stuff that I don't like. But in either case, that is what they preached about. It's what they talked about. So I started there. I understood what index funds were. I read every book I could. I saw every YouTube video I could. I understood the ins and outs of index funds, and I really stuck with that and stayed in that sphere of confidence, competence, expertise, whatever it is you want to call it, for 4 years before I started to invest in individual stocks. Now you may not have to do it for an entire 4 years. Let's be honest. Number one, you don't have to do it because there are videos like mine and other channels that exist now that did not exist when I started that I can help accelerate that process. Podcasts weren't even a big thing in 2010. So there are more resources today than what there were when I started. So I really think you can do this, within a few months, honestly, to really get it and understand it and then test it and try it. That is something that I did as well, where I invested via simulation. You can do this on Investopedia. You go to the top, close to the right hand corner, it says simulator. It's totally free, and you get to test out your investing ideas. So I went through and I tested out what index funds were and how they worked and how much money I would make and how much money I would lose if I actually tried it with my own real money, because at the time I didn't have no money. I was still in college when I was trying to figure all this out. But the thing is, once I got that, then I shifted over to doing individual stocks. And then once I learned that, I then shifted over and did more trading, where you're kind of trying to make more money a bit faster. And each phase for me, that's primarily the only thing that I did, and the only thing I studied, and the only thing I learned for me, and maybe I'm a slow learner, but for me, 2, sometimes 3 years to really get it and then move on to the next thing. The advantage of doing that is this. You start to, your skills compound. I think that's the biggest thing, because once I understood index funds, the entire stock market is based on an index. That's how index funds exist. So really I took what that broadest thing was and then broke it down. So if, let's say, Apple or Nvidia or Nike, or they comprise of some of the biggest stocks within the index. So then it wasn't, I had to figure out what a stock is and what Nike does. It's already in the index. Let me hone in and get really good at understanding those things. And those skills made it easier and quicker for me to pick up on other aspects of investing. But the thing is, I grew in that expertise and I got good at that particular area. I got good at understanding index funds and get good understanding what the fees were and which ones work and which ones don't work and why. That was number one. But then when I started moving to individual stocks, again, I honed in and focused on one thing. When I started investing, I focused on what we call fundamentals. That is understanding, we've talked about this before, understanding the balance sheet. How much money does a company make? Is the company growing? Every book I read was about that. Every YouTube video I read was all about that. I got good at that. Took me about a year. Then I moved over into what we call technical analysis. That is what you saw me do when we looked at the chart yesterday and understand how the market moves and what type of investments work during whatever season. How do you buy? When do you sell? And how do you timing all of these things? That took me, I would say I probably started that in 2019 or so. And took me, year and a half to really get it and understand it. And my experience compounded. So now as an investor, I go into certain things because I have these expertise levels that I'm really combining together. So I know, let's say, I'm looking at a can of Lysol, so I guess it's Procter & Gamble. So if I'm looking at PG, so that ticker symbol is PG, Procter & Gamble, they make a bunch of stuff, toilet paper being one of them. But if I look at that, then I can combine those skills together to make a better investing decision. But it's only because I focused on very small, simple parts of investing and then compounded those things together. So I can look at it and say, how much money has this company made? What's going on in the economy? What is the chart telling me to do? And decide whether or not I want to buy. When you watched yesterday's video, it took years of experience to figure out how I wanted to go throughout that process. Now, it took years for me. It may not take years for you. One, again, you got more information now than what you did 12 years ago. The other thing, too, is that because I'm in a position where, one, I have to educate people, and then two, I'm also someone who was an advisor. I had to learn that to a much higher degree than what most had to. So, if you trust in somebody and you're going to give them $1 million to invest for you, that person better know what they're doing, right? So I had to do it for much longer than what most people, there's something I can pick up in let's say a week or two, but I need to really test it over and over and over and over and over again until there are very little mistakes. I can't say no mistakes, I'm not perfect, but I need to reduce those mistakes to darn near zero for me, right? And especially if I'm teaching people about it, I gotta be really proficient, which is why a lot of times when I start to teach things, it's after I've done it for a minimum of 3 years. A minimum of 3 years. But again, you may not be in that position, which is frankly probably a little bit better because you can start investing a lot faster. But in either case, the key here is focus on those key areas first, and then focus on one key area first, and then start to move up and starts to really expand your investing game. The last thing I'll say is compare it to basketball, right? You can dribble, you can pass, you can shoot, you got free throws, 3-point, mid-range, it really expands, right? I would focus on dribbling first, right? Get really, really good at dribbling, then learn how to pass, then learn how to shoot, or shoot a layup, and then you slowly back out, then you learn how to shoot threes and free throws and all that kind of stuff. But when you're starting, it is the one thing that you do is dribble really, really good, or whatever skill it is that you want to focus on. You can focus on layups, I don't care. You guys get the point here. Focus on one thing that you are most interested in the entire investing space and get very good at that. Then when you're comfortable, move on to the next space. Because again, when you try to learn it all at the same time, it gets overwhelming, it gets confusing, and you don't get good at anything. And that can be a very frustrating experience when you are starting out. The last thing I'll say is this. What part of the market should you focus on first? Now, I would venture to say that the first thing you should start off with is index funds. You start there, it makes everything else a whole lot easier. If you start off trying to find the hottest stock in the world, and you start off trying to begin with technical analysis and look at all these charts and patterns, trying to make something out of it, it's very, very hard to get that. That's probably the most difficult part of investing, and then you're not going to get the basics. So start on the fundamentals of investing, which I believe are index funds, and then start to move up the ladder. That is what I would recommend. Okay? All right, let me know what you think in the comments. That's it for me.